The crystal chandeliers in the Fairmont Hotel's ballroom cast thousands of golden sparkles onto the marble floor. I stood by the entrance in the emerald evening dress that took me 3 hours to choose, and I still wasn't sure if I looked good enough for this place. Beside me stood Darius Benton in a simple dark suit, no diamond cufflinks, no gold watch, none of the flashy accessories that adorned every other man in the room. Welcome to my channel. I share new life stories here every day, and I'd really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and liked my video. Now let's jump back into my story. I'm sure you'll love it if you keep listening till the end. But when we walked in, the security staff snapped to attention. A gray-haired man in a tuxedo, whom I recognized from magazine photos as the owner of a major chain of malls, was the first to approach and shake Darius's hand, not mine. I was scanning the room, trying to adjust to this world of crystal and champagne when I saw him. Andre Talbot, my ex-husband, was standing by the bar, a glass in his hand. Kiana, the girl in the provocative short red dress, was hanging onto his arm. Andre was saying something to her, smiling smugly, clearly feeling like the king of the world just because he'd been allowed into this party as a +1 to some rich friend. Our eyes met. I watched his face drain of color, how he blinked as if he couldn't believe his eyes, and how his fingers unclenched, sending the champagne glass tumbling to the floor. It shattered with a deafening crash. Kiana shrieked, jumping back from the spray, and I just stood there, staring at the man who, only 1 year ago, had thrown me and my 1-year-old daughter out into the bitter cold. But to understand why this evening changed everything, I need to take you back 1 year, to the darkest night of my life. January was brutal that year. Outside our rented efficiency apartment on the south side of Atlanta, the thermometer read 1 degree Fahrenheit and the radiators barely worked. I wrapped Aaliyah in 2 blankets, but I was still terrified she would freeze. Aaliyah was 1 year and 2 months old. She had just started walking, holding onto furniture, and her first word was, "Mama." Every time she whispered it in her tiny voice, my heart swelled with happiness. That evening, Andre came home around 11 o'clock. I heard him fumbling with the lock for a long time, muttering curses. Drunk again. We had been married for 4 years. He used to seem so dependable, a serious man with big plans, who was childhood friends with the wealthy Vincent Everett. He told me he'd be an executive, that we'd have our own home, a new car, and trips to the beach every summer. I believed him. I worked as a bookkeeper for a small company, juggling all the bills while he built his career. In reality, his career consisted of hanging out with friends, playing poker on Fridays, and endless just-you-wait-and-see promises. The door finally flew open. Andre stumbled into the hall, hitting the coat rack with his shoulder. Jackets rained down onto the floor. "Shh," I whispered, peering out of the room. Aaliyah had just fallen asleep. He looked at me with a hazy gaze. Something was wrong. He wasn't just drunk, he was angry. That special kind of anger where a person is looking for someone to lash out at. "Fell asleep," he mimicked. "Of course she fell asleep. All she ever does is sleep and eat, just like you." "Andre, what happened?" He walked past me to the kitchen, yanking the refrigerator door open with a crash. "What happened? Like you don't know. It's all your fault." "I don't understand." He spun around so quickly that I flinched. "I got fired. That's what happened." My heart sank. Fired. God, how will we pay the rent? My salary alone won't cover it, and I still have the loan for the washer and dryer. "Andre, we'll figure something out. You'll find another job. I can take on more side work." "Side work?" He laughed, a horrible grating sound. "Who needs you? A dumb broad with a kid dragging her down." "Don't talk like that in front of Aaliyah." "In front of Aaliyah? She'll grow up just the same. An apple off the tree. Both of you are anchors around my neck. If it weren't for you and your kid, I'd have been an executive long ago." "My kid? She's our kid." "Mine? No, yours," he spat, as if Aaliyah were solely my fault, my mistake. "Andre, please, you're drunk. Let's talk in the morning." I reached out to touch his shoulder, but he shoved me away so hard my back hit the doorframe. Don't touch me. I'm sick of you. 4 years you've been sucking the life out of me. Aaliyah woke up from the shouting and started crying. There! Andre jabbed a finger toward the bedroom. That's all it ever does. Scream! I can't take it anymore. He rushed into the room. I ran after him, but he was faster. He threw open the closet and started flinging my things onto the floor. Dresses, sweaters, underwear. Andre, stop it! Both of you get out. I can't do this anymore. He grabbed the go bag I'd used for the hospital and started stuffing Aaliyah's things into it. Snowsuits, onesies, diapers. Aaliyah was screaming in her crib. I tried to calm her, but my hands were shaking too badly. You can't kick us out. This is our apartment. It's rented. In my name. The lease is under me. Get out. He was right. The lease agreement was, indeed, only in his name. I hadn't given it a second thought back then. What difference did it make? We were family. Andre grabbed my elbow and dragged me toward the door. I pulled free and ran back to Aaliyah, pressing her tight against me. You're a dumb broad, he yelled. And your daughter will be one too. Get out. I don't want to look at either of you. He shoved us out into the hallway, tossed the bag of belongings and my coat after us, and slammed the door shut. I banged and screamed and cried. The neighbors behind their walls stayed silent. They were afraid of Andre. He'd caused drunken scenes before. Aaliyah was sobbing in my arms, and I stood in the hallway in my house pants and a thin top, realizing this was the end. I went outside because the hallway was almost as cold as the street. The light bulb above the entrance flickered, tiny pellets of snow were falling, and the wind bit through the coat I had barely managed to pull on. I had $11 in my pocket. My phone was still inside the apartment. Andre hadn't let me grab it. Aaliyah stopped crying. She stared up at me with her huge gray eyes, and that look made me more terrified than the freezing air. I didn't have the right to fall apart, didn't have the right to surrender. I had my child. I walked toward the bus stop. Thoughts spun around in my head. I can't go to my mama. She was in Charlotte, North Carolina. That was 6 hours by bus, and a ticket cost more than $200. Friends? Andre had successfully pushed them all out of my life, one by one. This one calls too often. That one is a bad influence. The third one looks at him funny. The only place I could go late at night without money or ID was the Greyhound station. The bus ride there cost $3. I had $8 left. I held Aaliyah tighter and started walking. The station greeted me with light, warmth, and the smell of bleach. I stepped inside, feeling the fear ease up. At least we wouldn't freeze here. There weren't many people. A few were sleeping on the plastic seats in the waiting area. I sat down on a bench in the corner, unwrapped Aaliyah, and checked her. She was cold, her lips turning blue. Oh, God. I rubbed her hands and feet, blew on her fingers, wrapped her in my coat, and held her close. She whimpered softly. She was exhausted. She was also hungry. She'd eaten last 4 hours ago, and she was only 1. She needed to eat often. I could buy 1 pastry for $8. I bought a jelly donut and broke it into tiny pieces so Aaliyah could pick them up with her fingers. She ate and looked at me. She didn't understand what was happening, and thank goodness for that. Ma'am, this isn't a homeless shelter. A security guard stood over me, a young guy in a uniform with a rubber baton on his belt. Please, I said, I have nowhere to go. I have my baby. That's not my problem. This isn't a social services center. Either buy a ticket or get out. I don't have money for a ticket. Then get out. I felt the tears streaming down my cheeks. Aaliyah looked up at the guard and didn't understand why the man was saying such mean things to her mother. She's with me. The voice came from the side, male, low, and calm. The guard turned around. I looked too and saw a young black man getting up from the neighboring bench. He wore a worn leather jacket, was unshaven, and had a backpack at his feet. He looked like a traveler, or maybe even a drifter, one of those who hitchhike and sleep wherever they can. We're waiting for a bus, he continued, looking the guard straight in the eye. It's 6 hours away. We'll be quiet. The guard opened his mouth to object, but something in the stranger's gaze made him change his mind. He grunted, mumbled, "Just watch yourself," and walked away. The man sat down next to me, silently, not looking at me. A minute later, he stood up, walked to the hot beverage machine, and returned with 2 cups. "Tea with sugar. Will warm you up." I took the cup. My hands were shaking so badly that the tea spilled. He sat down again. He didn't ask questions, didn't offer advice, just sat next to me. It was as if it was the most normal thing in the world to be sitting in a bus station at night with a crying, unfamiliar woman and her child. Aaliyah, warmed by my body heat and tired from crying, fell asleep in my arms. I couldn't hold it in anymore and started to cry. Soundlessly, so as not to wake my daughter, but my shoulders shook and tears dripped right into my teacup. The man handed me a paper napkin, just handed it, without looking. I wiped my eyes. "Thank you," I whispered. "Cry," he said quietly. "It's okay, but then act." I looked at him. His face was ordinary, unremarkable. He looked maybe 30-something, his eyes tired but smart. "Who are you?" I asked. "A person who also sat in this station once without a dime. A long time ago, but I remember." "And what did you do?" "Got up and started walking, step by step. There were no other options." He fell silent, and I didn't ask any more questions. We sat in silence, and that silence wasn't heavy for some reason. It was peaceful. It was like having someone nearby who understood everything. After a while, he pulled a business card from his pocket and held it out to me. A simple, white card. Only a phone number on it. No name, no title. "If you don't find a place to stay tomorrow, call this number. It's a shelter for women with children. They will help." I took the card, just a number, written in plain black font, nothing else. "Thank you," I said again, though the word felt too small for what he had done. He nodded. I must have dozed off because when I opened my eyes, the dawn was graying outside the dirty station windows, and the bench beside me was empty. Only the empty teacup remained on the seat. I didn't even get a chance to ask his name. The shelter was called The Haven. I called the number on the card at 7 o'clock in the morning when Aaliyah woke up and whimpered with hunger again. A woman's voice on the other end listened without interrupting and gave me the address. It was on the outskirts of the city, 3 bus stops from the station. I didn't have money for the bus, but the driver, an older black man with gray hair, looked at me and Aaliyah and waved his hand. "Go on through, sister." The 2-story building behind a high fence looked normal, not luxurious but not run down either. A clean porch, curtains in the windows, and warm light spilling from inside. An older woman in a strict gray dress opened the door for me. Her gray hair was pulled back in a bun. Her gaze was like an X-ray. "Morgan?" "Yes." "Ms. Evelyn Price, the director. Come in. We'll feed the baby right now." She spoke concisely, without baby talk or sympathetic sighs. She led me to a small room with 2 beds and a crib. "This is your room for the next 3 months. The dining hall is on the 1st floor. Breakfast is in 1 hour. The corporate daycare is in the next wing if you have questions." I had a million questions, but I only asked one. "Why 3 months?" "Because you have 3 months to find a job and housing. We will help you, but we won't move your feet for you. After 3 months, you're either on your feet or you free up the spot for the next person." She spoke harshly, but for some reason, I wasn't offended. There was no cruelty in her voice, only the truth. "I will find a job," I said. Ms. Price looked at me for a long, assessing moment. "We'll see." And then she left. Within a week, I learned a little about The Haven. The shelter had been around for 5 years and had helped hundreds of women, battered, evicted, or running from abusive partners. They had lawyers who helped with documents, counselors who restored spirits, and a free daycare where you could leave your child while you worked. But the main thing was that no one knew where the money came from. Every month, a huge sum was deposited into the shelter's account. An anonymous benefactor. No names, no conditions. "Who is he?" I asked Ms. Price one day. "I don't know," she answered, "and I don't want to know, As long as the money keeps coming, we help people. That's what matters. I found a job within 2 weeks, cleaning the Onyx Tower Business Center from 6 o'clock in the morning until 2 in the afternoon. I scrubbed floors in offices, dusted, and took out the trash. The pay was low, but it was official, with a record in my employee file. In the evenings, I picked up side work, doing bookkeeping for small business owners. 3 clients, then 5, then 8. I sat up late at night in front of my laptop, balancing the numbers while Aaliyah slept in her crib beside me. I slept about 4 hours a night, lost 17 pounds. Dark circles settled under my eyes, but I didn't give up. I dropped Aaliyah off at the shelter's daycare at 5:30 in the morning and picked her up at 3 in the afternoon. She got used to it, stopped crying when I left, and started saying more words. Mama, give, Dolly, no. She never said daddy. 2 months later, I got a strange job offer. One of my regular clients, the owner of a small auto repair shop, recommended me to an acquaintance. He needed a remote bookkeeper for a construction company called Apex Development, a small firm from what I could tell, with a few projects around the state. Nothing special. The client contacted me via email. No calls, no meetings, just emails. The terms were strange. The pay was 3 times the market rate, but it required complete, fully transparent reporting. No shady business. I took the job, and on the 3rd day, I found something I wasn't supposed to find. The previous bookkeeper at the firm was stealing, brazenly, stupidly, barely even trying to hide it, inflated estimates, fake material purchases, payroll checks issued to non-existent workers. In 6 months, he had siphoned nearly $125,000 from the company. I sat in front of my laptop screen, wondering what to do. I could have stayed silent, closed my eyes, collected my good salary, and not gotten involved. The previous bookkeeper was already gone. His problems. My job was just to handle the current reporting, but I remembered the words of the man at the bus station. Cry, but then act. I wrote a detailed report exposing all the schemes, listing the amounts, attaching the proof, and sent it to the client. The reply came in 1 hour. Thank you. You are the first to notice this. I want to meet in person. Tomorrow, 2 o'clock, the Riverside Bistro on the Chattahoochee River. I barely slept that night. I kept running through the scenarios in my head. Who is this client? Why the meeting? Is this a test? Will they blame me for uncovering someone else's fraud? At 1 o'clock, I dropped Aaliyah off at daycare, put on the only decent dress I had managed to grab from the apartment, a dark green one, and drove to the riverfront. The Riverside Bistro was small and cozy, with a view of the water. I walked in, looked around, and froze. Sitting at a table by the window was him, the same man from the bus station, unshaven, in the same worn leather jacket. A cup of coffee sat in front of him, and a tablet lay nearby. He looked up at me. "Sit down, Morgan. I think we have something to talk about." I sat across from him, my heart hammering. "It was you," I started, and cut myself off. "Yes," he said. "I own Apex Development, and not just Apex. My name is Darius Benton. I imagine you have questions." I stared at him, unable to speak. Everything was jumbled in my head. The scruffy drifter at the station, the business card with no name, the shelter, the bookkeeping job. And now he was sitting across from me, still looking unremarkable, telling me he owned the company. "Were you following me?" I finally managed to whisper. Darius shook his head. "No, I gave you the shelter's card and forgot. Well, not forgot, but I wasn't looking for you specifically. Then my assistant said we needed a new bookkeeper. The previous one quit. I asked him to find someone reliable through word of mouth. Your name came up by chance." Chance. "Atlanta isn't as big as it seems. The auto repair shop owner whose accounts you handle is an old acquaintance of mine. He recommended you. I didn't know it was you until I saw the name on the contract." A waiter brought me coffee, although I hadn't ordered any. Darius nodded at him, and the man disappeared. "So, what now?" I asked. "Why did you want to meet?" "Because you found the theft. 3 people looked at those documents in the 6 months before you. An auditor, a financial consultant, and an outside accountant. No one noticed anything, or they noticed and kept quiet, but you wrote a report. He looked at me calmly, without a smile, but without threat. Why? I shrugged. Because it's wrong to steal, and it's wrong to keep silent when you see theft. Even if silence is more profitable, profit isn't everything. He paused, then said, I need a person like that in my company, not remote. In-house, a financial analyst. The salary is $7,500 a month. Official, with paid vacation and sick leave. Corporate daycare for your daughter, right near the office. Decide. $7,500. I was making $900 cleaning, plus maybe $2,500 with my side hustles, if I was lucky. $7,500 was a different life. My own apartment, decent food, toys for Aaliyah, doctors if she got sick. I don't take handouts, I said. It's not a handout, it's a job. Hard work. 12 hours a day, travel, reports, audits. I'm demanding. I ask tough questions. I don't tolerate mistakes. So why do you want me? I don't have experience in large companies. I'm just a bookkeeper. You are an honest, ordinary bookkeeper. That's a rarity these days. He finished his coffee and placed a bill on the table. Think about it until tomorrow. If you decide to accept, here is my business card. The real one, with my name. He handed me the card. Darius Benton, CEO, and the logo wasn't for Apex Development, but for Catalyst Holdings. I had heard the name. Construction, IT, logistics. One of the largest firms in the region. I took the card. He stood up. And one more thing, he said, already at the door. I don't expect gratitude for that night at the bus station. I did what any normal person should do. You don't owe me anything. If you turn down the job, I'll understand. And he left. I went back to the shelter and didn't sleep all night. Ms. Price found me in the kitchen in the morning. I was sitting over a cold cup of tea, staring at the wall. Tell me about it, she said, sitting opposite me. I told her everything, from the bus station to our conversation today. She listened silently, then asked, And what's holding you back? I don't know what he really wants. Maybe it's some kind of game. Maybe he's, well, you know. I know. You think a rich man just offers a job to a beautiful woman for no reason? I nodded. Did you ask him straight up? No. Then ask. If he answers honestly, that's something. If he starts dodging, you turn around and walk away. But sitting here and guessing is foolish. She stood up. And one more thing. Pride is a good thing, but it won't feed a child. Right now, you're working 16 hours a day and making peanuts. How long can you keep that up? 1 year, 2, and then what? Your health won't last forever. I stayed silent. If this man is giving you a chance, take it, but on your own terms. Negotiate the rules, and if he breaks them, you leave. The next day, I called Darius. I accept, but I have conditions. I'm listening. A 2-month probation period. No personal relationship whatsoever. Only work. If I feel like you expect anything else, I walk away. No drama, no explanation. He was silent for a second. Accepted? Anything else? Yes. I want to understand who I'm working for. You said you also sat in that bus station. What does that mean? Another pause. It's a long story. I'll tell you when there's time. Start Monday, 9 a.m. The office address is on the card. And he hung up. The Catalyst Holdings office occupied 3 floors in the Onyx Tower on Peachtree Street. I arrived at 8:30, wanting to come early and get my bearings. The security guard checked my ID and gave me a badge. The secretary at the reception desk, a young woman with flawless makeup, smiled. You must be Morgan. They're waiting for you. 6th floor, office 601. The elevator was mirrored. I looked at my reflection, pale, thin, in the only decent suit I'd bought on sale. Among all these people in expensive jackets, I looked like an imposter. But I remembered Ms. Price's words, on your own terms. Office 601 was spacious but modest. No ostentatious luxury. A desk, chairs, a computer, and a shelf stacked with files. Darius was sitting at the desk. Today, he was in a simple shirt without a jacket. The unshaven look remained, but he no longer looked like a drifter. He looked like a man who didn't care what others thought of him. "Have a seat," he said. "I'll brief you now." For the next 2 hours, he explained the structure of the holding company, 5 main companies, dozens of contractors, hundreds of employees, billions in revenue, and he had built all of it himself, from scratch, in 15 years. "Your job is financial flow analysis," he said at the end. "Look for leaks, audit contractors, make sure money isn't walking out the door. People like the previous bookkeeper at Apex Development exist in every large company. Your job is to find them. Why me? You must have a security department. We have auditors, but they check against templates. You see what others miss. You proved it once. Prove it again." He stood up. "Come on, I'll show you your office." The first few weeks, I worked like a woman possessed. I arrived at 8, left at 10 p.m. I picked Aaliyah up from the corporate daycare. It stayed open until 9 for people like me. The daycare was wonderful. Bright rooms, kind teachers, good food. Aaliyah stopped crying in the mornings. She loved it there. She even started telling me about her friends, Maggie, Dean, and Stella. At work, things were tougher. I quickly realized that the people at Catalyst Holdings viewed me with suspicion. Whispers behind my back, sideways glances, fragments of conversations. Where did she come from? They say the boss hired her personally. Wonder what she did to deserve that. I tried to ignore it, doing my job and not getting involved in office politics. 1 month later, I found a second scheme of theft. One of the top executives, Mr. Eugene Perry, the logistics director, had been taking kickbacks for years through Shell transportation companies. The scale was serious, about $750,000 over the last 3 years. I wrote the report and sent it to Darius. The next day, Mr. Perry came to my office. He was a hefty man in his late 50s, with a heavy gaze and a manner of speaking, as if he were doing you a favor. "Morgan, what is your middle name?" "Ann." "Morgan Ann, I hear you found some discrepancies in my department's documents." "Yes, I did." He sat down opposite me without asking permission. "Listen, you're new here. You don't know how things work. These discrepancies, they're everywhere. That's how business works. Everyone does it." "Not everyone." "Everyone who wants to survive. Listen to me. I mean you well. Forget about that report. I'm ready to compensate you for your inconvenience. $25,000 cash. Right now." He placed an envelope on the desk. I looked at the envelope, then at him. "Take that and leave." $50,000. "Leave." His face changed. The good-natured mask dropped. "You don't understand who you're messing with, girl. I have connections with the police, with the IRS, everywhere. I can make your life very difficult." I stood up. "Get out of my office, now!" He stood too, leaning over the desk toward me. "You'll regret this," he hissed, and walked out, slamming the door. My hands were shaking, but I didn't change a single word in the report. Eugene was fired a week later, quietly, without scandal. I heard that Darius gave him a choice: return the money and resign, or face criminal charges. He chose the former. After that, the attitude toward me in the office changed. The whispering didn't stop, but now there was something else in it. Fear. She turned in Eugene. Better not mess with her. Upstart. Thinks she can get away with anything because the boss is backing her. It hurt to hear this, but I told myself they were wrong. They didn't know me. They were judging me by themselves. My relationship with Darius remained strictly professional. He didn't flirt, didn't hint at anything, and didn't invite me to dinner. In meetings, he addressed me by my first and last name, just like everyone else, briefly, sticking to business. But I noticed the small things. Once, I mentioned in passing to a colleague that I loved coffee with cinnamon. The next day, a high-end coffee machine and a jar of cinnamon appeared in my office. "For all department employees," the secretary said, but the department consisted only of me. Another time, I mentioned in a meeting that I hadn't read a certain classic book on financial analysis. That evening, a copy was on my desk with a bookmark. No note, no signature. The corporate daycare Aaliyah attended was the best in the city. I found this out by chance when one of the mothers at the playground said she had been trying to get her kids in there for years and couldn't. Too expensive and too long a waiting list. I didn't know what to think. 3 months passed. One evening, I stayed late as usual. Darius came into my office. "Still here?" "Finishing the Vestrum report." He nodded, silent for a moment. "Can I ask a non-work question?" I tensed up. "Try me." "Are you still living at the Haven?" "No, I'm renting a room, not far from the office." "A room? You can't swing an apartment yet?" "Not yet. I'm saving for a down payment on a mortgage." He nodded again. He looked like he wanted to say something, but couldn't bring himself to. "What is it?" I asked. "Nothing. I'm just glad things are working out for you. You're strong." "I'm not strong. I just don't give up." "That's the same thing." He turned to leave and then suddenly said, "You asked why I was sitting in that bus station. If you want, I can tell you." "Not now. It's too late. But I do want to hear it sometime." He looked at me, long and closely. "Then Saturday, if you're free. Not dinner, not a date, just a conversation in the park, on a bench, like normal people." I thought for a second. "Okay." We met on Saturday at Piedmont Park. Darius was in jeans and a simple jacket, looking like a regular person again, not a billionaire. We walked along the path. Aaliyah ran ahead, chasing pigeons. "I grew up in the group home system," he began without preamble. "I don't remember my parents. I only know my mother died of an overdose when I was 3. Father unknown." I remained silent. Life in the group home was rough. The older kids and the staff hit us. I learned not to cry. Then I learned to fight back. Then I learned to think 3 steps ahead so I wouldn't have to fight back. At 18, they released me. They gave me a certificate, $500, and a room in a hostel for 6 months. After that, I was on my own. He paused. Aaliyah ran up to us and showed him a pebble she had found. Darius inspected the pebble seriously and praised her. She ran off to find another one. I lost the room after 2 months. Couldn't find a job. No experience, no connections, no education. Who needed me? I scraped by doing odd jobs. Then those dried up, too. I ended up at the bus station. That very one. In the same waiting room, on the same bench where you were sitting. He smiled, without humor. I stayed there for 3 nights, eating out of trash cans. On the 4th night, I decided I'd had enough. Not enough of living, but enough of feeling sorry for myself. I got up and went to look for work. And you found it? I did. Loading trucks at the farmer's market. The pay was peanuts, but they fed me. The market owner was a complicated man. 6 months later, he offered me a chance to move up, in ways as you can imagine. A crime ring? Yeah, I refused. They beat me up, broke 3 ribs, hurt my kidney. I was in the hospital for 2 months. Oh, God. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. I looked at him in surprise. I had time to think in the hospital. I decided I would become richer than all of them. But I'd do it honestly. No bloodshed, no stealing, no shady deals. I would prove that there was another way. And did you prove it? You be the judge. I started by reselling old electronics, buying broken things, fixing them, selling them. Then small business, apartment renovations, then construction. I lost everything twice. Started over. Now I'm 34. I have a holding company, thousands of employees, billions in revenue, and a women's shelter. He nodded. The shelter is because I remember what it's like to sit in a bus station and think that no one cares about you. We reached the pond. Aaliyah was feeding ducks with breadcrumbs that Darius had brought. But you know the funniest thing? He said. I have everything. Money, homes, cars, but no family, no real friends. People see a billionaire and want something from him. No one sees me. He fell silent. Aaliyah laughed. A duck snatched a crumb right out of her fingers. I see you, I said softly. He turned toward me. I don't know how to talk pretty, he said. I don't know how to court a woman. I spent my life building a business and never learned how to build a relationship. But if you give me a chance, I'll try to learn." I was quiet, looking at my daughter, at the ducks, at the man beside me who had gone through hell and remained a good person. "I'm not ready," I said finally. "Not yet. I need time." He nodded. "I'll wait." And we just stood there side by side, watching Aaliyah laugh and the ducks squabble over crumbs. And I felt peaceful, genuinely peaceful for the first time in a long time. Then the past reminded me of itself. Andre. I had almost forgotten about him. He hadn't called, hadn't written, hadn't tried to connect. I heard from acquaintances that he was living with that woman, Kiana, who supported him. Drinking, not working. A typical story. But one day I received a summons to court. Andre had filed a lawsuit, not for child support, but to determine custody. He was demanding that Aaliyah be handed over to him. I read the papers and couldn't believe my eyes. He threw us out into the freezing cold, and now he wanted to take my daughter. The lawyer I consulted explained it was a shakedown. He didn't want the child. He wanted money. "He'll drop the case if you pay him." "How much?" In these cases, they usually ask for $25,000 to $50,000. I exhaled. "I don't have that kind of money." "Then we'll have to go to court. But I should warn you, he has a good lawyer." He hesitated. "I hear his lawyer is from the firm of Vincent Everett." Vincent, Andre's rich friend, the one who had covered up his theft at work. I knew this wouldn't be a fair fight. I went to the court hearing alone. I didn't want to ask Darius for help. This was my affair, my battle. The courtroom was small and stuffy. Andre sat at the table opposite me in a suit, clean-shaven and uncharacteristically sober. Beside him sat a lawyer in expensive glasses with a stack of documents. Kiana wasn't there. Apparently, the Loving Family Act was just for the judge. Andre's lawyer spoke smoothly, confidently. He painted a picture of an unstable mother, inconsistent income, living in a shelter, a child suffering without a father. The father, on the other hand, was on the path to redemption and wanted to give his daughter a complete family. The judge, a woman in her 50s with a weary face, listened, making notes. I defended myself as best I could. I talked about that night, about the bus station, about how he called Aaliyah a dumb broad. I presented papers from the daycare, character references, receipts for children's items. The lawyer countered every one of my arguments. No proof. One-sided interpretation. Mother is alienating the child from the father. I felt my energy draining away. The judge was clearly listening more closely to him than to me. Then the courtroom door opened. Darius walked in. He silently crossed the room, sat down in the last row, and folded his hands across his chest. The judge looked up, and I saw her face go pale. She recognized him. "Continue," she told the lawyer, but her voice had changed. The lawyer turned around, recognized him too. For a second, he lost his train of thought. The judge announced a recess. After the recess, everything changed. The judge suddenly started asking Andre uncomfortable questions. Why hadn't he shown interest in his daughter for 1 year? Why hadn't he paid child support? Did he have a stable income? Andre stammered, getting his facts mixed up. The lawyer tried to help, but the judge cut him off. The decision was announced 1 hour later. Andre's suit was denied. Custody of the child would remain with the mother. The father was granted the right to visitation under a structured schedule, but only in the mother's presence. Furthermore, Andre was required to pay child support for the entire previous year. The amount would be calculated based on the average regional salary. Andre bolted from the courtroom, slamming the door. The lawyer gathered his papers and left without looking at me. I stood in the middle of the room, unable to believe it was over. Darius approached me. "Are you all right?" "Why did you come? I didn't ask you to." "You didn't ask, but I couldn't watch a good person being drowned just because they're honest." "The judge recognized you?" "Yes. I financed the renovation of the courthouse building last year and several charitable projects she's involved in." "So you pressured her?" He shook his head. No, I just sat in the room. She drew her own conclusions. Maybe she got scared, maybe she was ashamed, or maybe she just decided it was easier to issue a fair ruling than to explain later why she issued an unfair one. I remained silent. You're angry, he said. I don't know. I probably should be. You intervened in my life without asking. Yes, I did intervene. He looked at me calmly, without excuses. And I would do it again, because seeing you destroyed was unbearable. If that's wrong, I'm prepared to apologize. I was silent for another minute. Thank you, I said finally. He nodded. We left the courthouse together. Outside, a light spring rain was falling. He stopped and turned to me. I'm still waiting, he said, for when you'll be ready. I took his hand, just took it, and held it. He froze. We stood in the rain, holding hands and saying nothing. It wasn't an answer. Not yes yet, but no longer no. And that was enough for me. 1 year passed. Is 1 year a lot or a little? Enough for wounds to heal, enough to learn to trust again, enough to understand that happiness doesn't come on its own. You have to build it, day by day, step by step. I stood in front of the mirror in my own place, a small 2-bedroom I had bought with a mortgage 3 months ago in a good neighborhood. Darius offered to help with the down payment. I refused. He offered to move in with him in his huge house on the riverfront. I also refused. Someday, I told him, when I'm ready. He waited. He knew how to wait. Tonight was a special night. The annual charity gala for Atlanta's business elite. The same one Darius never attended. He avoided publicity and didn't like social events. But this year, his name was leaked to the press. Journalists discovered he was the one who had been funding the Haven Shelter and 10 other charitable projects in the city all those years. He was nominated for Philanthropist of the Year. He couldn't refuse, and he asked me to go with him, publicly for the first time, as his date. I put on the emerald dress I had bought especially for the evening. I took my time choosing it, wanting to look elegant but not flashy. My earrings were simple silver hoops, a gift from Darius for my birthday. Low heels so I wouldn't stumble from nervousness. Aaliyah was sitting on the bed, watching me get ready. "Mama pretty," she said. She was almost 3 now. She spoke in sentences, knew colors and numbers up to 10, and loved to draw and dance. And she called Darius Darius naturally, as if he had always been a part of our lives. "Thank you, sweetie. Is Darius coming soon?" "Yes, soon." She clapped her hands. Ms. Joyce, our kind 60-something nanny, sat in an armchair reading a book. "Don't worry, Morgan," she said. "Everything will be fine. You deserve this evening." Did I deserve it? 1 year ago, I was scrubbing floors in a business center and wondering if I had enough money to last until payday. And now, I was a financial director of one of the holding companies with an office, a secretary, and subordinates. I still sometimes woke up at night and couldn't believe this was my life. The doorbell rang. Aaliyah ran to open it. "Darius! Darius is here!" I walked into the hall. Darius stood in the doorway in a dark suit, no tie as always. In his hands, a small bouquet of wildflowers. "These are for you," he said to Aaliyah, handing her the bouquet. She grabbed the flowers and pressed them to her chest. "Thank you, Mama. Look, I got flowers." Darius looked at me. I saw him pause for a second, and there was something in his eyes that took my breath away. "You're beautiful," he said. "Just thank you." He held out his hand to me. I took it. "Ready?" "No, but let's go." The Fairmont Hotel glittered with lights, a red carpet, photographers, a crowd of guests in evening wear. I gripped Darius's hand and tried not to think about the fact that everyone was looking at us. "Relax," he whispered. "They're nobody. Just people. Just people with millions in the bank. Money doesn't make a person better or worse. Trust me, I know." We entered the ballroom. Crystal chandeliers, marble floor, waiters with trays of champagne. Everything was like a movie, except this wasn't a film. It was my life. Guests turned their heads and whispered. I heard snippets. "That's Benton. Who was she with? Where did she come from? Darius walked forward, paying no attention. People approached us, greeting us, shaking his hand, offering polite niceties. He answered briefly, politely, but without warmth. It was clear he was uncomfortable here. We each took a glass of champagne and moved toward a window. "I hate this," he said quietly. "What exactly?" "The smiles, the handshakes. Everyone wants something from me. No one asks, 'How are you doing?'" "How are you doing?" I asked. He looked at me and smiled, a real smile, not a social one. "Right now, I'm doing great." And then I saw him. Andre. He was standing by the bar in a cheap suit, trying to look expensive. Beside him was Kiana in a red dress that was too short, too bright. She was fanning herself and looking around the room like a queen. Andre was here as a guest of Vincent Everett, the rich friend who had bailed him out so many times. A +1 at a society event. Not a standalone person, but an attachment to someone else's invitation. He was laughing at something Kiana said and looked pleased with himself. The man who 1 year ago threw his wife and child into the cold, and then tried to steal his daughter through the courts. And then he turned his head and saw me. I watched his face change, surprise, recognition, and then fear, because he saw who was standing beside me. Darius Benton, the man everyone in this room knew, the man politicians wanted to befriend and competitors feared. Andre's fingers unclasped. The glass flew down and shattered on the marble floor. Champagne sprayed everywhere, soaking his pants and Kiana's shoes. She shrieked. Waiters rushed to clean up, and I stood there, looking at the man who had once broken my life. And I felt nothing. No anger, no pain, not even satisfaction. Just emptiness. He had become a nobody to me. Andre shouldn't have approached. Any smart person in his place would have pretended not to notice and gone to the other side of the room. But Andre was never smart. He had been drinking more. I watched him throw back 2 glasses at the bar and then stride toward us. Kiana tried to hold him back, but he shook off her hand. "Well, well," he said loudly, stopping in front of us. "Morgan Sterling, long time no see." People around us began to turn. I felt dozens of eyes on me. "Andre," I said evenly, "leave." "What's wrong? Can't I say hello to my ex-wife?" He grinned. "I see you landed on your feet. Found a sugar daddy quickly. How much is he paying you? By the night or monthly?" The room went silent. Everyone was staring at us. I wanted to answer, but Darius placed a hand on my shoulder. "You must be Andre Talbot," he asked calmly. Andre flinched. One thing to insult your ex-wife, another to talk back to Darius Benton. "Yeah, so?" The same Andre Talbot who 4 years ago stole $35,000 from his employer's cash register and didn't serve time only because his friend Vincent Everett covered the damages? Andre went white. Vincent, who was standing nearby, also looked ill. That's a lie," Andre stammered. "I have copies of the police report and the restitution agreement. Would you like me to show them to the guests here?" Andre was silent. His lips were trembling. Darius continued in the same calm, level voice, but every word fell like a stone. "You threw this woman and her 1-year-old child out into the street. In January, at 1 degree Fahrenheit. You called your daughter a dumb broad. You failed to pay child support for 1 year. You tried to steal your child through the courts to blackmail her mother for money, and now you stand here and dare to speak of morality?" Andre opened his mouth, but couldn't utter a word. "And one more thing." Darius pulled out his phone. "I have a recording of your conversation with the creditor to whom you owe $100,000. You promised to pay him back as soon as you scam the dumb broad for the cash and settle your debt." He turned the phone screen toward the room. "Want me to play it? The acoustics are excellent here." Andre started shaking. You wouldn't dare." "I would dare, but I won't. You know why?" Darius put his phone away. "Because you are a nobody. You are not worth 5 minutes of this attention. You are a small, pathetic man who spent his entire life trying to seem bigger than he is." He took a step forward. Andre backed away. "Leave now. And if you ever come near Morgan or Aaliyah again, I will destroy you. Not physically, legally, financially, socially. You won't be able to find a job sweeping streets in this city." Security guards were already walking toward us across the ballroom. Andre looked around, searching for support. Vincent turned away. Kiana was looking at him with disgust. "You're all hypocrites," he hissed. The guards took him by the arms. "To the exit," one of them said. "I can walk myself. Let go." They escorted him out of the room. Kiana rushed after him, her heels clicking. The ballroom was silent for another second. Then the dam broke. Voices boomed, whispers started up again. Darius turned to me. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have." "No," I said. "It was exactly right." And for the first time that evening, I felt like I could breathe. I watched the awards ceremony from the audience. Darius walked onto the stage awkwardly, clearly unused to public attention. The host spoke about charity, about the millions spent helping people, about the Haven shelter that saved hundreds of women. Darius took the microphone. "I don't like speeches," he said, "but since I have to—" The room quieted down. I grew up in the group home system. I know what it's like when there's no one to help you, when it's you against the world, when there seems to be no way out. He paused. "That's why I help. Not for fame, not for tax breaks, but because one day, when I was sitting in a bus station with an empty pocket, a stranger gave me a piece of bread, just because, and I survived." He looked into the audience, right at me. "This award isn't mine. It belongs to every woman who found the strength to get up after being knocked down, to every mother who protects her child, to every person who refused to give up." He raised the statuette. "It belongs to my Morgan." The audience applauded. People stood up. I felt tears streaming down my cheeks, and I wasn't ashamed. After the reception, Darius drove me home. We sat in the car outside my apartment building, not getting out. "Thank you," I said. "For what?" "For everything. For that night at the bus station, for the job, for believing in me." He was silent. "I want to ask you something," he finally said. "I've wanted to for a long time, but I was afraid. Ask. Are you ready? Not for a wedding, not for anything official, just to truly be together." I looked at him, at the man who had walked through hell and remained good, who helped others because he remembered what it was like to be alone, who had waited for me for 1 year without once pressuring me or demanding anything. "Yes," I said, "I'm ready." He let out a breath, as if he had been holding it for a very long time. Then, "May I kiss you?" I laughed. "You may." And he kissed me, carefully, gently, as if afraid to startle me. 6 months later, we were standing on the beach in Miami, Florida, Darius, Aaliyah, and me. A small house was behind us, not a mansion, but cozy and bright, with a porch and a swing set in the yard. This was my dream. The ocean, a home near the water, a happy daughter. Aaliyah was building something in the sand, her brows furrowed in concentration. Darius was helping her, covered up to his elbows in sand. "Darius, the tower goes here," she ordered. "Yes, Your Majesty," he replied. I watched them, thinking about how strange life was. 1 year ago, I was sitting in a bus station, thinking it was all over, that I was worthless, that my daughter was doomed to grow up in poverty and fear. And now, here it was. Happiness. Not a fairy tale, not perfect, but real. Darius walked over to me, wiping his hands on his jeans. "What are you thinking about?" "That I'm the luckiest dumb broad on earth." He laughed. "You are not dumb. You are the smartest woman I know." That's what he called me, Andre. Andre is an idiot. His opinion doesn't count. I nodded. He was right. Andre's opinion no longer mattered. I had heard what happened to him. After that evening, Vincent cut off their friendship. The public scandal had ruined his reputation. The creditor, discovering Andre planned to cheat him, filed a lawsuit. Kiana left, taking all his valuables. Andre's mother, Carol, tried to contact Darius, pleading for her son. Security turned her away. She caused a scene outside the office. It was filmed and posted online. Andre came to see me once, 1 month ago. He was thinner, older, and looked pathetic. Dim eyes, shaking hands. He begged for forgiveness, said his mother had manipulated him, Kiana had used him, and that I was the only one who had ever loved him. He asked me to take him back, or at least help him with money. I looked at him for a long time, at the man who had once seemed like my whole world. Now he was just a stranger with a miserable face. "Do you remember what you called me that night?" I asked. "You said I was a dumb broad, and Aaliyah would be the same." He lowered his eyes. "I forgave you a long time ago, not for your sake, but for mine. I don't want to carry hate inside me." I took an envelope from my bag. "Here's $3,000. It's enough to get you started. Rent a room, find a job, start over, like I did." He took the envelope with trembling hands. "Thank you, Morgan. Maybe—" "No. There will never be anything between us. Never. To me, you are just a person I helped once, just as someone once helped me. The circle is complete. Go." He left. I closed the door and exhaled, and I felt free. Truly free. "I want to show you something," Darius said. He pulled a small box from his pocket. My heart leaped. "Is that what I think it is?" He opened the box. Inside was a simple ring, no diamonds, with a delicate engraving inside. "Step by step," I read. "That was what you told me in the park, that you weren't strong, you just didn't give up. Step by step." He took my hand. "Morgan, I don't know fancy words or romantic gestures. I spent my whole life building a business and forgot how to build relationships. But with you, I want to learn." He looked into my eyes. "Will you marry me?" Aaliyah ran up to us, grabbing both of our legs. "Mama! Darius! Look, I built this! A tower and a wall!" I looked at the ring, at Darius, at my daughter who was laughing, covered in sand from head to toe, at the ocean roaring at our feet, at the sky turning pink from the sunset. "Yes," I said, "I will." Darius slipped the ring onto my finger. His hands were shaking. Aaliyah jumped up and down. "Hooray! Mama and Darius! Mama and Darius!" She didn't understand what had happened. For her, it was just a happy moment. Mama is smiling, Darius is smiling, everyone is together at the beach. But for me, it was everything. Darius held me tight, as if afraid to let go. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For being you, for giving me a chance, for believing." I leaned into him. 1 year ago, I was a woman thrown out into the cold, without money, without a home, without hope, with a child in my arms and $7 in my pocket. And now, I was standing on the beach, in the arms of a man who loved me, with a daughter who was happy, a ring on my finger, and a whole life ahead. I didn't know what would happen next. No one does. But I wasn't afraid anymore because I had learned the most important thing: to get up, to keep walking, to never give up, step by step. I'm really glad you're here and that I could share my story with you. If you liked it, show me by liking the video and subscribing to my channel. Let's see how many of us there are. Write in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is. I'm so curious to know where all you wonderful people are tuning in from. If you want to support me a little extra, you can also send a small donation. I share new life stories for you every single day. And now, 2 of my most popular stories will pop up on the screen so you can choose what to watch next.